Detective Sarah Martinez never imagined that her 15 years in law enforcement would prepare her for the moment she'd have to choose between her badge and her sister's marriage. The champagne flutes clinked around the ballroom as anniversary guests celebrated what they believed was true love, while Sarah stood in the shadows, handcuffs weighing heavy in her jacket pocket, watching her brother-in-law Marcus slip a hotel keycard into another woman's purse. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 weeks earlier, her sister Elena had laughed over their mother's famous tres leches cake, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "Sarah, you're paranoid. Marcus would never cheat on me. You've been a detective too long, seeing criminals everywhere. You'll never catch him doing anything wrong because there's nothing to catch." Elena's confidence had been absolute, her trust unwavering, her blindness complete. But Sarah had learned long ago that the truth doesn't care about family loyalty or wishful thinking. It simply exists, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to look hard enough. Sarah's journey to this devastating moment began on a humid Tuesday evening in downtown Phoenix. She'd been wrapping up a fraud case at the precinct when her phone buzzed with a text from her partner, Detective Ray Kowalski. "Check your email. Got something on the Martinez case that might interest you." The subject line made her stomach clench. Phoenix Metro Investigation, subject Marcus Delgado. Her brother-in-law's name in an official investigation file felt like ice water in her veins. Marcus Delgado, successful real estate developer, devoted husband to Elena, father to their twin daughters Sofia and Carmen. The man who joined their family 7 years ago with charm, ambition, and what seemed like genuine love for her sister. Sarah opened the file with trembling fingers. The Phoenix Metro Financial Crimes Unit had been tracking a money laundering operation through luxury real estate transactions. Several properties had been purchased with cash by shell companies, then quickly resold at inflated prices. The pattern suggested someone with inside knowledge of property values and zoning changes, someone exactly like Marcus. But it wasn't the financial crimes that stopped Sarah's breath. It was the surveillance photos tucked into the back of the digital file. Marcus entering the Ritz-Carlton downtown at 2:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. The same Wednesday, Elena had mentioned he was visiting a job site in Tucson. Another photo showed him leaving the hotel at 4:43 p.m. with a woman Sarah didn't recognize. Blonde hair, designer suit, legs that went on for miles. Her hand was intertwined with his. Detective Martinez had seen cheating spouses in her career to recognize the body language, the way Marcus's free hand rested on the small of the woman's back, the way she leaned into him as they walked, the way they both looked around cautiously before getting into his Mercedes, as if they knew they were doing something wrong. Sarah's training had taught her that coincidences were rare in criminal investigations. Financial crimes and extramarital affairs often went hand in hand. Criminals who would steal money had already proven they'd betray trust. The question was whether Marcus was just laundering money or if he was also washing away his marriage vows. She printed the photos and slid them into her personal files, her hands shaking slightly. This wasn't just another case anymore. This was family. This was Elena's happiness. This was her twin niece's stability. But it was also potential evidence of serious crimes that could destroy more than just a marriage. The next morning, Sarah found herself sitting across from Elena in their childhood kitchen, watching her sister hum while making breakfast for the twins. Elena moved with the contentment of a woman who believed she was loved, who trusted completely, who had never doubted her husband's fidelity. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore Marcus's oversized university t-shirt over her pajama pants. She looked happy. She looked secure. She looked like she had no idea her world was about to crumble. "You're quiet today," Elena observed, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "Everything okay at work?" Sarah forced a smile. Just tired. Long case. It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd been up most of the night staring at those surveillance photos, wrestling with what to do next. Family loyalty warred with professional duty. Personal love battled with the pursuit of justice. Sofia and Carmen burst into the kitchen like miniature hurricanes, backpacks flying, demanding breakfast and attention in equal measure. At 8 years old, they were mirror images of Elena at that age, all energy and curiosity and boundless trust in the adults who were supposed to protect them. Sarah watched them chatter about school projects and playground drama, their innocence a stark contrast to the darkness she carried in her jacket pocket. Marcus appeared in the doorway, adjusting his tie with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. He was undeniably handsome in that polished, successful way that had initially impressed the entire Martinez family. Tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. His smile came easily, his charm felt natural, and his love for Elena had seemed genuine. Now Sarah studied him with different eyes. Detective eyes. Was that guilt in the way he avoided extended eye contact? Was there deception in how quickly he kissed Elena goodbye? Or was she seeing crimes that didn't exist because she desperately wanted to protect her sister from heartbreak? "Morning, Sarah," Marcus said, his voice warm and familiar. "You're here early." "Wanted to see the girls before school," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. "How's the Scottsdale project coming along?" Something flickered across his face so quickly she almost missed it. "Great. Really great. Should be breaking ground next month." He kissed the twins goodbye, grabbed his coffee, and headed for the door. "Love you, babe," he called to Elena. "Love you too," Elena called back, her voice full of genuine affection. After he left, Sarah sat with her sister while the twins finished breakfast. Elena chatted about anniversary plans, about how Marcus had been working late on a big deal but promised to take time off for their celebration. She mentioned the party he'd planned for the weekend, how he'd rented the ballroom at the Phoenician resort, how he'd insisted on flying in her favorite band from Los Angeles. "He's been so stressed about this project," Elena said, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "I keep telling him to take it easy, but you know Marcus. When he commits to something, he gives it everything." Sarah nodded, thinking about commitment and what it really meant. Did Marcus give everything to his marriage, or was his commitment split between Elena and someone else? Between legitimate business and criminal enterprise? That afternoon, Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for weeks to come. She couldn't investigate Marcus officially without cause, but she could investigate the financial crimes case and see where it led. If Marcus was innocent, she'd find evidence of that. If he wasn't, well, Elena deserved to know the truth even if it destroyed her. She started by diving deeper into the money laundering investigation. The Financial Crimes Unit had been tracking cash purchases of luxury properties across Phoenix and Scottsdale. The pattern was always the same. Shell company makes cash offer on high-end property. Purchase goes through quickly. Property is resold within months at a significantly higher price. The profits disappeared into offshore accounts within days of each sale. The investigation had identified 7 properties so far, totaling over $12 million in suspicious transactions. What caught Sarah's attention was the timing. Each purchase coincided with Marcus's involvement in major development projects. His inside knowledge of preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Zoning changes, upcoming infrastructure improvements, and market trends would make him invaluable to anyone looking to profit from real estate manipulation. Sarah cross-referenced the shell company addresses with known associates of organized crime families. 2 of the companies traced back to a law firm that had been flagged by the FBI for suspicious activity. Another company's registered agent was currently under federal investigation for tax evasion. This wasn't small-time fraud. This was serious money being moved by serious criminals. But still, she had no direct evidence linking Marcus to the scheme. Correlation wasn't causation, and suspicion wasn't proof. She needed more before she could move forward, either professionally or personally. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source.
Detective Kowalski was reviewing security footage from one of the suspicious property sales when he spotted a familiar face in the background. Marcus Delgado, shaking hands with Vincent Torino, a known associate of the Castellano crime family. The handshake happened outside the title company office, 30 minutes before papers were signed on a $3 million cash sale. Sarah stared at the grainy security image on Kowalski's computer screen. Marcus's face was clearly visible, his body language relaxed and familiar. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a business meeting between associates. "You know this guy?" Kowalski asked, pointing at Marcus on the screen. Sarah's mouth went dry. "That's my brother-in-law." Kowalski's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? Sarah, if your family's connected to this—" "He's not connected," she said quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, I don't think he's connected. I need to look into this more." That night, Sarah sat in her apartment, staring at the surveillance photos and security footage spread across her coffee table. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Marcus photographed with known criminals, Marcus having an affair while his legitimate businesses were struggling, Marcus spending money on hotel rooms and expensive gifts while telling Elena they needed to be careful about finances. The pattern was becoming clear, but Sarah still couldn't bring herself to act on it. This was her sister's husband, her niece's father, the man who'd walked Elena down the aisle when their father was too sick to do it himself, the man who'd held Sarah's hand in the hospital waiting room when their mother had her heart attack. But he was also potentially a criminal who was betraying Elena in the worst possible way. Sarah's phone rang, jerking her from her thoughts. Elena's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, sis!" Elena's voice was bright and excited. "I know it's late, but I had to tell someone. Marcus just surprised me with the most beautiful diamond bracelet. He said it was an early anniversary present, that he wanted me to have something special to wear to the party." Sarah closed her eyes. Diamond bracelet. Expensive gift. Money that should have been going to family expenses, instead funding guilt presents to cover up infidelity and criminal activity. "That's wonderful," Sarah managed to say. "He's been so romantic lately," Elena continued. "Working late, but always bringing me flowers or little gifts when he gets home. I feel like we're newlyweds again. I'm so lucky, Sarah. I know you worry about me, but Marcus loves me completely. I can feel it." After Elena hung up, Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and tried to reconcile the loving husband her sister described with the man in the surveillance photos. Criminals were often charming. Cheaters were often attentive to their spouses, overcompensating for their guilt with grand gestures and expensive gifts. The diamond bracelet wasn't a symbol of love. It was evidence of crime. And Elena's happiness wasn't built on a solid foundation. It was constructed on lies that were about to crash down. The next few days blurred together as Sarah wrestled with her conscience and her duty. She reviewed the financial crimes evidence obsessively, looking for any explanation that would exonerate Marcus. She ran background
Checks on his business associates, traced his financial transactions, and even did drive-by surveillance of his office building. Everything she found made the case against him stronger. His construction company was hemorrhaging money, behind on payments to suppliers and subcontractors. His personal credit was maxed out. His bank accounts showed large cash deposits that coincided with the suspicious property sales. And his cell phone records showed frequent contact with Vincent Torino and other known criminals. But it was the affair evidence that finally pushed Sarah over the edge. She'd been watching Marcus's office building when he emerged at lunchtime with the same blonde woman from the hotel surveillance photos. They walked to a nearby restaurant, their body language intimate and familiar. Sarah followed at a distance, her heart pounding as she watched her brother-in-law hold hands with another woman just 3 blocks from where Elena was getting her hair done for the anniversary party. At the restaurant, Sarah positioned herself where she could observe without being seen. Marcus and the woman sat close together, his hand covering hers on the table. They laughed and talked like lovers, not like business associates. When their food arrived, he fed her a bite of his pasta and she wiped sauce from his chin with her napkin. These were the gestures of intimacy, the small touches that belonged between husband and wife. Sarah took photos with her phone, each click of the camera feeling like a betrayal of Elena's trust,
but also like evidence of Marcus's betrayal of their entire family. When the couple kissed across the table, Sarah had to look away. She'd seen enough. That evening, she sat in her car outside Elena's house, watching through the kitchen window as Marcus played with the twins while Elena prepared dinner. It was a picture of domestic happiness, a family scene that would have warmed Sarah's heart a week ago. Now it felt like watching a performance, a carefully constructed lie designed to hide the truth. Her phone buzzed with a text message from the blonde woman. Sarah had managed to identify her as Natasha Volkov, a real estate agent who specialized in luxury properties. The text was meant for Marcus. "Can't wait for tonight. Room 1247. Wear the cologne I bought you." Sarah stared at the message, her hands shaking. Marcus had given Natasha his sister-in-law's phone number by mistake, probably rushing to delete their text history from his own phone. The error was a gift from the universe, final confirmation of what Sarah already knew but hadn't wanted to accept. Marcus Delgado was not just laundering money with organized crime figures, he was also cheating on Elena with a woman who was likely involved in the real estate fraud scheme. Elena's perfect marriage was a fantasy, and her husband was a criminal. That night, Sarah made the hardest decision of her professional career. She couldn't arrest Marcus for financial crimes without more evidence, but she could gather that evidence. She could build a case that would not only expose his criminal activities, but also reveal his infidelity to Elena before the anniversary party became a celebration of lies. She had less than a week to work with, and she needed help she couldn't get from the department without revealing her personal connection to the case. But Sarah had resources beyond her official channels. She had contacts in private investigation, friends in federal law enforcement, and a burning need to protect her sister from further betrayal. The investigation began in earnest the next morning when Sarah called in a personal favor from Jackie Torres, a private investigator who'd worked with the PD on several cases. Jackie was a former FBI agent with a talent for financial forensics and a willingness to work in the gray areas of the law when justice demanded it. "I need surveillance on someone," Sarah told Jackie over coffee at a diner far from her usual haunts. "Someone who might be involved in organized crime money laundering." "Official case?" Jackie asked. "Personal case," Sarah admitted. "My sister's husband." Jackie studied Sarah's face. "This is
About family. This is about justice, Sarah corrected. It just happens to involve family. Over the next 3 days, Jackie and Sarah worked together to build a comprehensive case against Marcus Delgado. They documented his meetings with Vincent Torrino and other known criminals. They photographed him entering and leaving hotels with Natasha Volkov. They traced financial transactions between his accounts and the shell companies involved in the property laundering scheme. Most damaging of all, they discovered that Marcus had been using Elena's social security number to open credit accounts that he'd maxed out to fund his criminal activities. Elena's perfect credit had been destroyed by her husband's illegal enterprises, and she didn't even know it. By Thursday evening, 2 days before the anniversary party, Sarah had enough evidence to arrest Marcus on multiple charges of money laundering, fraud, and identity theft. But she still hadn't figured out how to break Elena's heart. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Elena called Friday morning in tears. "Sarah, something's wrong," she sobbed into the phone. "I found a credit card statement in Marcus's briefcase. Charges for hotel rooms and jewelry and restaurants. All the jewelry charges are for things I never received. All the hotel charges are for times when he said he was working late or traveling for business." Sarah's heart broke for her sister. "Where are you now?" "I'm at home. The girls are at school. Marcus is at work. I confronted him this morning and he said it was all business expenses, that he was entertaining clients. But Sarah, some of these charges are from last week. Hotel room charges while I was here making his dinner, thinking he was working late." "Elena, I need you to listen to me carefully," Sarah said. "Pack a bag for you and the girls. Come stay with me for a few days."
What? Why? Sarah, what's going on? Sarah took a deep breath. Marcus isn't just cheating on you. He's involved in criminal activity. Serious criminal activity that could put you and the girls in danger. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long that Sarah thought the call had dropped. Finally, Elena's voice came back, small and broken. How do you know this? Because I've been investigating him, Sarah admitted. I saw surveillance photos 3 weeks ago. I've been building a case. You've been investigating my husband for 3 weeks and didn't tell me? The pain in Elena's voice was worse than anger would have been. Sarah had betrayed her sister's trust in the name of protecting her, and now Elena was learning about both betrayals at once. I needed to be sure, Sarah said. I needed proof. And do you have proof? Yes. Another long silence. Then, what kind of criminal activity? Sarah explained everything. The money laundering scheme, the organized crime connections, the identity theft using Elena's personal information, the affair with Natasha Volkov, the financial ruin that Marcus had hidden behind lies and fake business trips. When she finished, Elena was crying again. The anniversary party, Elena whispered. Tomorrow night. Everyone's going to be there. My friends, his family, the girls' teachers. How can I face them knowing all of this? You don't have to, Sarah said. Cancel the party, take the girls, and disappear for a while. Let me handle Marcus. No. Elena's voice suddenly turned steel. No, I'm not running. I'm not the one who should be ashamed. If Marcus wants to humiliate our family, fine, but he's going to face the consequences. Elena, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that if you have enough evidence to arrest him, you should arrest him tomorrow night in front of everyone. Let them all see what kind of man I married. Sarah's blood ran cold. Elena, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, Elena said. He destroyed our marriage in public, flaunting his affair around town while I planned our anniversary celebration. He destroyed my credit and my financial security while I trusted him completely. He used our daughters as props for his fake family man image while he was working with criminals.
But the girls will be there. The girls deserve to know who their father really is, Elena said firmly. They deserve to see that actions have consequences. They deserve to see their mother stand up for herself and for them. That afternoon, Sarah met with the prosecutor's office to finalize the charges against Marcus. With Jackie Torres's evidence and the department's financial crimes investigation, they had more than enough to secure convictions on multiple felony counts. The arrest warrant would be ready by Saturday evening. But Sarah was terrified of what tomorrow night would bring. Arresting Marcus at the anniversary party would be the ultimate public humiliation, but it would also traumatize Sofia and Carmen. It would create a spectacle that would follow Elena and the girls for years. It would turn what was supposed to be a celebration of love into a display of betrayal and criminal justice. Yet Sarah understood Elena's need to reclaim her power, to control the narrative of her own life. Elena had been lied to and betrayed and victimized by the man she trusted most. If she wanted to turn the tables on Marcus, if she wanted him to face his crimes in front of the people he deceived, then Sarah would make it happen. Saturday evening arrived with unseasonable cold, as if the weather itself was reflecting the chill that had settled over the Martinez family. Sarah dressed carefully in her best dark suit, her badge and gun concealed beneath her jacket. She'd coordinated with Phoenix PD to have backup nearby, but she would make the arrest herself. This was personal. The Phoenician Resort ballroom was decorated with white roses and gold accents, Elena's favorite colors. A string quartet played softly in the corner while guests mingled and celebrated what they believed was a perfect marriage. Elena moved through the crowd in a stunning black dress, accepting congratulations and well wishes with grace that only Sarah could see was forced. Marcus worked the room like the charming businessman he'd always appeared to be, shaking hands and telling stories about his successful marriage to the most wonderful woman in Phoenix. He wore the cologne Natasha had bought for him, the scent that was supposed to be their private signal.
Instead, it would become evidence of his infidelity. Sarah watched from the back of the room, her hand resting on the handcuffs in her jacket pocket. Elena had insisted the arrest happened during Marcus's anniversary speech, when he would be talking about love and commitment and the importance of family. The irony was Elena's final gift to her cheating husband. At 8:30, Marcus tapped his champagne glass and called for attention. The ballroom quieted as guests turned toward the small stage where he stood with Elena beside him, his arm around her waist in a gesture that now looked possessive rather than loving. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily across the silent room. 7 years ago, I married the most incredible woman I ever known. Elena Martinez stole my heart the moment I met her, and she's made every day since then better than the last. Elena smiled beside him, but Sarah could see the tremor in her hands, the tension in her shoulders. This was the hardest performance of Elena's life, and she was pulling it off flawlessly. "Marriage isn't always easy," Marcus continued, and Sarah almost laughed at the understatement. "It requires trust, communication, and commitment. It requires putting your partner's needs before your own desires." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Sarah began moving through the crowd toward the stage, her badge ready, her backup team alerted. In 30 seconds, Marcus's world would explode. "Elena has given me 2 beautiful daughters and a home filled with love," Marcus said, raising his champagne glass. "She's supported my career, believed in my dreams, and forgiven my mistakes. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve her love." That was Elena's cue. She stepped away from Marcus and nodded to Sarah. "Marcus Delgado," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the applause as she climbed
Onto the stage. "Phoenix Police Department, you're under arrest." The silence that followed was deafening. Guests stared in shock as Sarah pulled out her handcuffs and moved toward Marcus. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally, rage. "What the hell is this?" Marcus demanded. "You're being charged with money laundering, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit racketeering," Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's sound system. "You have the right to remain silent." Marcus's eyes darted to Elena, and for the first time all evening, his composure cracked completely. "Elena, what did you do?" Elena stepped to the microphone, her voice steady and clear. "I married a criminal," she said to the stunned crowd. "A man who stole my identity to fund illegal activities. A man who's been cheating on me with his business partner, while I planned this celebration of our marriage." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Several guests pulled out their phones to record the scene. Sofia and Carmen stood frozen near their grandmother's table, their young faces confused and frightened. Sarah finished reading Marcus's rights while uniformed officers took him into custody. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Marcus turned to Elena one last time. "This will destroy you too," he said. "Your reputation, your social standing, the girl's future. Everyone will know you were married to a criminal." Elena lifted her chin defiantly. "Everyone will know I had the courage to turn you in," she replied. "Everyone will know I chose justice over maintaining a lie." As Marcus was led away through the silent crowd, Elena approached the microphone again. "I apologize to all of you for this deception," she said. "I recently learned that my husband has been living a double life, and I decided that truth was more important than preserving appearances. The bar will remain open and dinner will be served as planned. Please stay and celebrate honesty, justice, and second chances." To Sarah's amazement, most of the guests did stay. They surrounded Elena with support and comfort, expressing admiration for her strength and courage. The anniversary party became something unprecedented, a celebration of a woman's decision to choose truth over lies, justice over comfort, and her children's future over a false present. Sofia and Carmen were whisked away by their grandmother before the media arrived, their innocence protected as much as possible from the chaos their father had created. Elena would have difficult conversations with them in the coming days, but tonight they were safe.
Later, as crime scene photographers documented evidence and prosecutors prepared their case, Sarah found Elena sitting alone in the hotel bar, still wearing her black dress, but looking somehow lighter than she had in weeks. "Do you regret it?" Sarah asked, sliding into the booth across from her sister. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring into her untouched glass of wine. "I regret marrying him," she said finally. "I regret not seeing the signs. I regret that my daughters have to grow up with this scandal. But I don't regret tonight." "It was brave," Sarah said. "It was necessary," Elena corrected. Marcus was never going to change. The lies were only going to get bigger. The crimes were only going to get worse. At least this way, we controlled when and how the truth came out. 6 months later, Marcus Delgado was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to multiple felony charges. The plea deal required him to cooperate with ongoing investigations into organized crime activities, potentially adding more time to his sentence. Elena filed for divorce immediately after his arrest and has since rebuilt her life with remarkable resilience. She returned to school to finish the accounting degree she'd abandoned when the twins were born. She started a nonprofit organization to help other women who've been financially victimized by their spouses. And she's never once expressed regret about the decision to arrest Marcus at their anniversary party.
Transferred to the Financial Crimes Unit, where she's become a specialist in cases involving domestic financial abuse. The skills she developed investigating her own brother-in-law have helped her solve dozens of similar cases, protecting other families from the devastating betrayal Elena experienced. Sofia and Carmen are thriving despite their father's imprisonment. They understand that their mother made difficult choices to protect their future, and they've grown up with a clear understanding that actions have consequences, that truth matters more than appearances, and that women can be strong enough to choose justice over comfort. The anniversary arrest became a local legend, a cautionary tale about the danger of living lies and the power of choosing truth. But for Sarah and Elena, it was simply the night they decided that family loyalty didn't mean protecting criminals, even when those criminals shared their last name. Elena never did say Sarah would never catch Marcus cheating. Instead, she thanked her sister for caring enough to look for the truth, and brave enough to act on it when she found it. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable the person you love to destroy themselves and everyone around them. The handcuffs that had felt so heavy in Sarah's jacket pocket that night now sit in her desk drawer as a reminder that justice isn't always convenient, truth isn't always comfortable, and doing the right thing isn't always easy. But it's always worth it. And Elena? She kept the diamond bracelet Marcus had given her, not as a symbol of his love, but as evidence that she'd learned to recognize the difference between genuine affection and guilt gifts. She had it appraised after his arrest and discovered it was purchased with money stolen from her own identity. She sold it and used the proceeds to pay for her college tuition. Sometimes the best revenge is living well, but sometimes the best justice is simply living truthfully. The ballroom at the Phoenician Resort still hosts anniversary parties and wedding receptions, but the staff always remembers the night when celebrating love turned into exposing lies, when family loyalty meant calling the police, and when saying "I do" to justice meant saying "I'm done" to betrayal. Elena Martinez is no longer Elena Delgado. She reclaimed her maiden name, her financial independence, and her right to trust her own instincts. And when people ask her about that night, about the choice to arrest her husband at their anniversary party, she always gives the same answer. "I spent 7 years living a lie because I was afraid of the truth. I wasn't willing to spend even one more day that way." The truth had set her free. It just took handcuffs to do it. The morning after Marcus Delgado's arrest brought an unusual quiet to Phoenix. Sarah Martinez woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, her phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. News of the anniversary party arrest had spread through social media faster than wildfire, turning what should have been a private family matter into public spectacle.
Sarah ignored the messages from reporters and concerned colleagues, focusing instead on the single text that mattered. Girls are safe with Mom. Come when you can. Elena. The drive to her mother's house took Sarah through neighborhoods where she and Elena had grown up, past the elementary school where they'd learned to read, the park where they'd played as children, the church where Elena had married Marcus 7 years ago in what everyone believed was a fairy tale wedding. Now that fairy tale had become a cautionary tale, broadcast across local news channels and social media platforms. Carmen and Sofia were sitting at their grandmother's kitchen table when Sarah arrived, coloring book spread between bowls of cereal that had gone soggy and untouched. At 8 years old, the twins possessed an eerie intuition about adult emotions, and their usual chatter had been replaced by watchful silence. "Tia Sarah?" Sofia said quietly, looking up from her coloring book. "Mommy says Daddy went away." Sarah sat down beside her nieces, choosing her words carefully.
That's right, Mija. Your daddy made some bad choices, and now he has to face the consequences. Like when we get time out for lying? Carmen asked. Something like that, Sarah replied, marveling at how children could sometimes understand complex situations better than adults, but bigger. Elena appeared in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, but somehow looking stronger than she had in months. The weight of secrets and suspicion had been lifted from her shoulders, replaced by the cleaner burden of known truth and clear decisions. "How are you molding up?" Sarah asked. Elena poured herself coffee with steady hands. "Better than I expected, worse than I hoped." She glanced at the twins, who had returned to their coloring with the adaptive resilience of children. "They keep asking when he's coming home. What are you telling them?" "The truth, in pieces they can handle," Elena said, "that their father broke important rules, that sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love, that we're safe now, and we're going to build something better." The doorbell rang, followed by their mother's voice greeting someone at the front door. Maria Martinez had been handling the media calls with the fierce protectiveness of a woman who had raised 2 strong daughters and wasn't about to let strangers exploit their pain. "That'll be the lawyer," Elena said. "James recommended someone who specializes in financial fraud cases. Apparently, I need to understand exactly how much damage Marcus did to our finances before I can start rebuilding." The lawyer turned out to be Patricia Hernandez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen every possible way marriages could go wrong. She spread documents across Maria's dining room table like a surgeon laying out instruments. "The good news is that your sister's investigation preserved most of the evidence we need to recover your assets," Patricia told Elena. "The bad news is that Marcus used your identity to access credit lines worth over $200,000? Sarah watched Elena's face go pale. $200,000? Minimum. We're still tracing all the accounts. Patricia pointed to a stack of credit applications. "He used your social security number to open 17 different accounts with various banks and credit card companies. Most of the money went to fund his criminal activities, but some went to finance his relationship with Natasha Volkov." The name hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd known about the affair intellectually, but hearing the other woman's name in connection with her stolen identity made the betrayal feel fresh and raw. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry, even a lease on a downtown apartment where they met regularly, all funded with credit obtained using your information. "Can we recover the money?" Sarah asked. "Some of it. The criminal restitution process will help, but it's a long road. The more immediate concern is protecting Elena and the children from further financial damage." Over the next several hours, Patricia walked Elena through the complex process of reclaiming her financial identity. Fraud alerts, credit freezes, police reports, affidavits. Each form Elena signed was another step away from the life Marcus had built on lies and toward whatever came next. By afternoon, the legal paperwork was complete, but the emotional work was just beginning. Elena sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by diplomas and photos from happier times, trying to figure out how to explain to her daughters that their comfortable life was over. "The house will have to be sold," Elena told Sarah. "Even if we recover some of the stolen money, I can't afford the mortgage payments on my own. The girls will have to change schools, leave their friends. They're resilient," Sarah said. "Kids adapt better than adults do." "It's not fair to them," Elena said, her voice breaking for the first time since the arrest. "They didn't choose this. They didn't do anything wrong, but their lives are destroyed because..." father is a criminal." Sarah pulled her sister close, letting Elena cry against her shoulder the way she had when they were children, and the world felt too big and confusing. "Their lives aren't destroyed," Sarah said firmly. "Their lives are changing. There's a difference." That evening, as the twins watched cartoons in the living room, Elena made the phone calls that would dismantle the life she'd thought was real. She contacted the twins' school to explain why they might be absent for a few days. She called her boss to request extended leave from her part-time job at the medical office. She reached out to close friends to let them know what was happening before they heard it from someone else. Each conversation was painful in its own way. Some friends expressed shock and sympathy. Others seemed almost excited by the drama, asking intrusive questions about details Elena wasn't ready to share. A few offered practical help, temporary housing, childcare, emotional support. Those were the friends Elena made note to keep. The most difficult call was to Marcus's mother, Isabella Delgado. Elena had always maintained a respectful relationship with her mother-in-law, despite Isabella's obvious preference for her son's version of events in any disagreement. Now Elena had to explain why her grandchildren's father was in jail, and why they wouldn't be visiting him anytime soon. "This is all a misunderstanding," Isabella said immediately. "Marcus would never do these things. Someone is setting him up." "Mrs. Delgado, the evidence is overwhelming," Elena replied patiently. "Your son pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges." "Because his lawyer told him to. Because the system is rigged against successful Hispanic men." Elena closed her eyes, recognizing the pattern of denial that had enabled Marcus's behavior for years. "The girls are safe and healthy," she said, redirecting the conversation to what mattered. "They're going through a difficult time, but they're being supported." "I want to see them," Isabella demanded. "They're my grandchildren. I have rights." "Of course you do, but right now they need stability and routine. When things settle down, we'll arrange visits." The call ended with Isabella threatening legal action, another complication Elena would have to navigate in the coming weeks. She was beginning to understand that Marcus's arrest was just the beginning of a long process of untangling the web of lies and obligations he'd created. That night, after the twins were asleep, Sarah and Elena sat on their mother's back porch, sharing a bottle of wine and trying to process everything that had happened. The desert air was cool and clean, a sharp contrast to the emotional heaviness that had settled over their family. "Do you remember when we were kids and we used to plan our perfect lives?" Elena asked, staring up at the stars. "I was going to marry a doctor and live in a big house and have 4 children and a dog. I was going to be a detective and solve crimes and never get married because boys were gross," Sarah replied, earning a small laugh from her sister. "We were both half right," Elena said. "You became a detective and solved crimes. I got married and lived in a big house. We just didn't account for the complications." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of the city and the closer sounds of desert wildlife settling in for the night. Finally, Elena spoke again. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The late nights he claimed were work, the business trips that seemed too frequent, the way he started being extra affectionate after he'd been distant, the expensive gifts when money was supposedly tight. You weren't supposed to be suspicious of your husband. Trust is the foundation of marriage. He exploited that trust." "But you saw it," Elena pointed out. "You investigated because you suspected something was wrong." "I saw it because I'm trained to see it. And even then, I hoped I was wrong. I spent weeks trying to find evidence that would prove Marcus was innocent." Elena turned to look at her sister. "What changed your mind? Made you decide to move forward with the investigation?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "It was the text message from Natasha. When I realized he was actively cheating, not just involved in financial crimes, I knew I couldn't protect him anymore. You deserved to know the truth. Even though it destroyed my marriage?" "Your marriage was already destroyed," Sarah said gently. "Marcus destroyed it when he chose crime and infidelity over honesty and commitment. I just made it visible."
Elena nodded slowly. I know you're right. It's just hard to accept that 7 years of my life were built on lies. Not all of it was lies, Sarah said. Your love was real. Your commitment was real. The good times you remember actually happened. Marcus's betrayal doesn't erase the person you were or the mother you've become. The next morning brought new challenges. Elena's story had made the local news, and reporters were camped outside her house, hoping for interviews or photos. Social media was buzzing with speculation about the case, much of it inaccurate and harmful. Sarah called in favors with media contacts to try to control the narrative, emphasizing Elena's courage in coming forward, rather than sensationalizing the criminal aspects of the case. But the internet was harder to manage, and Elena found herself the subject of harsh judgment from strangers who felt qualified to critique her choices based on incomplete information. Some people are saying I knew about the crimes all along, Elena told Sarah, showing her phone screen filled with cruel comments. They think I was complicit and only turned him in when I got caught. Some people are idiots, Sarah replied bluntly. The people who matter know the truth. But Elena was discovering that reputation damage was almost as devastating as financial damage. Job interviews became uncomfortable when potential employers recognized her name from news coverage. Parent-teacher conferences at the twin school were awkward when other parents whispered and stared. Simple errands like grocery shopping became exercises in enduring curious looks and barely concealed gossip. The twins were struggling too in ways that broke Elena's heart. Sophia had become withdrawn and anxious, asking repeatedly if she would have to go to jail because her daddy did. Carmen had developed a stubborn streak, refusing to follow rules at school or at home, as if testing whether authority figures could be trusted to be consistent. They need counseling, Elena told Sarah after a particularly difficult evening when Carmen had thrown a tantrum about bedtime and Sophia had cried herself to sleep. They need professional help to process what's happened. Sarah helped Elena research child psychologists who specialized in family trauma, eventually finding Dr. Rebecca Chen, a warm, patient woman who had experience helping children cope with parental incarceration. The first session was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Marcus were moving forward rapidly. His cooperation with federal investigators had revealed the scope of the money laundering operation, implicating several other real estate professionals and at least 3 members of organized crime families. The case was becoming bigger than anyone had initially realized. Patricia Hernandez called Elena with updates that were simultaneously encouraging and overwhelming. The good news is that Marcus's cooperation is helping prosecutors recover assets from other defendants. The bad news is that the case is going to drag on for months, possibly years. What does that mean for us? Elena asked. It means uncertainty, Patricia admitted. It means media attention whenever there are new developments. It means the twins will have to grow up with this story following them. Elena felt the weight of that reality settling over her. This wasn't just a crisis to survive, it was a new normal to navigate. Her daughters would always be known as the children whose father went to prison for organized crime connections. Their family would always be the subject of whispered conversations, curious stares. But Elena was also discovering strength she hadn't known she possessed. Each day brought new challenges, but she met them with growing confidence. She was learning to trust her own judgment again, to make decisions based on what was best for her children rather than what would maintain the illusion of a perfect marriage. The breakthrough came during a conversation with Dr. Chen about the twins' therapy progress. Sofia and Carmen had been attending sessions for 3 weeks, and their behavior at home was gradually improving. They were beginning to understand that their father's choices didn't reflect on them, that they were safe with their mother, and that their family's love for them hadn't changed. Children are remarkably resilient when they have consistent support, Dr. Chen told Elena. Sofia and Carmen are processing their trauma in healthy ways because you've created a stable environment for them to heal. It doesn't feel stable, Elena admitted. We're living with my mother. We don't know where we'll live permanently. I don't have a full-time job. Everything is uncertain. Stability isn't about external circumstances, Dr. Chen explained. It's about emotional consistency. You've shown the girls that you'll protect them, support them, and tell them the truth in age-appropriate ways. That's the foundation they need to build resilience. That conversation helped Elena realize that she was already succeeding at the most important part of her new life, being a good mother under impossible circumstances. The financial problems would eventually be resolved. The legal proceedings would eventually conclude. The media attention would eventually fade. But the relationship she was building with her daughters, based on honesty and mutual support, would last forever. Elena decided to stop waiting for her life to return to normal and start building a new normal that was better than what she'd lost. She enrolled in a full-time accounting program at the local community college, using financial aid and scholarships to cover tuition. She found a small apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools, using money from the sale of jewelry and furniture to cover the security deposit. Most importantly, she started building a support network of other single mothers who understood the challenges she was facing. Through a divorce support group, she met women who had survived similar betrayals and rebuilt their lives with grace and determination. Sarah watched her sister's transformation with pride and admiration. Elena was becoming stronger, more confident, more independent than she had ever been during her marriage. The woman who had once deferred to Marcus's decisions about everything, from vacation destinations to dinner menus, was now making complex financial and legal decisions with competence and authority. "You're different," Sarah told Elena one evening as they packed boxes in Elena's old house, preparing for the move to the apartment. "You're more yourself than you've been in years." Elena paused in her packing, considering the observation. "I think I forgot who I was when I got married. I became Marcus's wife, the twins' mother, but I lost Elena somewhere along the way. And now? Now I'm all of those things, but I'm Elena first," she said. "I make decisions based on what I think is right, not what Marcus would approve of or what other people expect." The move to the apartment marked a turning point for the family. The space was smaller than what they were used to, but it was theirs. Elena had chosen every piece of furniture, every paint color, every decoration. The twins had their own rooms, decorated according to their individual preferences, rather than matching sets that looked good in magazine photos. Sofia and Carmen adapted to their new home with the flexibility of children, quickly establishing routines and claiming favorite spots. They seemed to thrive in the smaller space, perhaps because it felt more manageable and secure than the large house where their father's lies had loomed over everything. Elena's return to college was another positive step. Her accounting classes were challenging but engaging, reminding her of intellectual capabilities she had set aside during her marriage. Her professors were supportive, her classmates were friendly, and her grades were excellent. For the first time in years, Elena had goals that belonged entirely to her. The financial recovery was slower but steady. Patricia Anandis's legal work was paying off, with courts ordering restitution from Marcus and his criminal associates. Elena's credit was gradually being repaired as fraudulent accounts were closed and legitimate debts were addressed. It would take years to fully recover from the financial damage, but the trajectory was positive. Marcus's sentencing hearing arrived on a cold morning in February, 8 months after his arrest. Elena chose not to attend, focusing instead on taking the twins to school and going to her statistics class. She had said everything she needed to say in her victim impact statement, which Patricia had read to the court on her behalf. The statement had been carefully crafted to balance honesty with dignity, explaining the impact of Marcus's crimes on his family without pleading for sympathy or revenge. Elena had written about the financial devastation, the emotional trauma, and the ongoing challenges of rebuilding their lives. But she had also written about resilience, hope, and the possibility of healing. Marcus received the expected 8-year sentence with the possibility of early release for continued cooperation with federal investigations. Elena felt no satisfaction in the punishment, only relief that this chapter of the legal proceedings was finally closed. That evening, Elena cooked dinner in her small kitchen while the twins did homework at the dining table. The scene was peaceful and ordinary, a stark contrast to the chaos and uncertainty of the past months. As she watched Sofia and Carmen working on their math problems, asking each other for help and giggling over shared jokes, Elena realized that they had not just survived Marcus's betrayal, they had thrived beyond it. The woman who had once planned anniversary parties to celebrate a marriage built on lies was now building something infinitely more valuable. A life based on truth, independence, and authentic love. Elena Martinez had lost a husband and a lifestyle, but she had gained herself. And in the end, that trade had been worth everything. Sarah stopped by that evening, as she did most nights, bringing ice cream and homework help for the twins. As they sat around the small dining table sharing dessert and stories from their day, Sarah marveled at how normal this felt. How right. This was what family looked like when it was built on truth instead of illusion. This is what strength looked like when it was tested by adversity. This was what love looked like when it was freed from the burden of maintaining lies. Elena Martinez had learned that sometimes the best anniversary gift is the courage to end what should never have begun. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let them live in a beautiful lie, when an honest truth, however difficult, will set them free to build something real. 3 years had passed since the anniversary party that changed everything, and Elena Martinez was standing in the graduation ceremony auditorium wearing a cap and gown, her accounting degree finally complete. In the audience, Sofia and Carmen cheered loudly when her name was called, their voices carrying over the polite applause of strangers. Sarah sat beside them, wiping away tears of pride as her sister walked across the stage to accept the diploma that represented so much more than academic achievement. Elena had graduated summa cum laude, but the real accomplishment was deeper than grades or honors. She had rebuilt herself from the ground up, transforming from a woman who had lost everything to someone who had created something entirely new and authentically her own. The timid wife who had once asked Marcus's permission to buy groceries was now a confident professional who trusted her own judgment and made decisions based on her values rather than fear. After the ceremony, the family gathered at a restaurant Elena had chosen. A small Mexican place that served the kind of comfort food that reminded them of childhood Sunday dinners. The twins, now 11 years old, had grown into thoughtful, resilient young women who carried themselves with the quiet confidence that comes from surviving difficulty and emerging stronger. "So what's next, Mom?" Sofia asked, twirling cheese around her fork. Over the years, she had developed into the family planner, always thinking 3 steps ahead and making sure everyone was prepared for what was coming. "Well," Elena said, smiling mysteriously, "I got a job offer yesterday." Sarah nearly choked on her drink. "You didn't tell me you were interviewing?" "I wanted to wait until I knew for sure," Elena explained. "Remember Patricia Hernandez, the lawyer who helped us during the divorce? She's starting a new practice focused on financial abuse cases, and she wants me to be her forensic accountant." Carmen looked up from her food. "What's a forensic accountant?" "Someone who investigates financial crimes," Elena explained. "I would help other women who have been victimized the way we were, tracing stolen money and hidden assets so they can get their lives back." The symmetry was beautiful and fitting. Elena would use the skills she had developed rebuilding her own life to help other women escape similar situations. The pain Marcus had caused would be transformed into purpose. The knowledge gained through suffering would become a tool for healing others. "The salary is good," Elena continued. "Good enough that we can start looking for a bigger place. Maybe even a house with a yard where you girls can have that dog you've been wanting." Sofia and Carmen exchanged excited glances.
For 3 years, they had lived in the small apartment, with grace and without complaint, but Elena knew they missed having space to spread out, to have friends over, to live without constantly being aware of thin walls and close neighbors. Sarah raised her glass of soda. "To new beginnings," she said. "To truth telling its story," Elena replied, clinking her glass against her sister's. The job with Patricia Hernandez turned out to be even more fulfilling than Elena had anticipated. Her first case involved a woman whose husband had been systematically draining their retirement accounts to fund a gambling addiction. Elena's investigation uncovered hidden debts, forged signatures, and a pattern of financial manipulation that had left the family on the brink of bankruptcy. "I feel so stupid," the client, Rebecca, told Elena during their first meeting. "How did I not know what was happening to our own money?" Elena recognized the shame and self-blame immediately. "You trusted your partner," she said gently. "Financial abuse relies on that trust. The victim isn't stupid. The abuser is criminal." Over the following weeks, Elena painstakingly reconstructed Rebecca's financial history, identifying every fraudulent transaction and hidden account. The work was meticulous and sometimes tedious, but Elena found deep satisfaction in each piece of evidence she uncovered. Every dollar she traced back to its rightful owner was a small victory against the kind of betrayal she understood intimately. The case resulted in full restitution for Rebecca and criminal charges against her husband. More importantly, it gave Rebecca the documentation she needed to protect herself and her children moving forward. Elena watched the transformation from victim to survivor with recognition and pride. "You saved my life," Rebecca told Elena on the day the settlement was finalized. "I don't know how to thank you." "Pay it forward," Elena replied. "Help the next woman who needs someone to believe her story." Word of Elena's work spread quickly through the legal community. Family law attorneys began referring clients who suspected financial fraud but lacked the expertise to prove it. Elena's combination of technical skills and personal experience made her uniquely effective at understanding both the mechanics of financial abuse and the emotional complexity.
Investigating someone you love. Each case was different, but the patterns were depressingly similar. Husbands who opened credit cards in their wives' names, partners who manipulated business finances to hide assets during divorce proceedings, spouses who used their knowledge of family finances to maintain control through economic intimidation. Elena's work was making a real difference in these women's lives, but it was also stirring up memories she had worked hard to process and move beyond. Some nights, she would come home from tracing a particularly egregious case of financial manipulation and find herself angry all over again about Marcus's betrayal. "It's normal," Dr. Chen assured her during one of their monthly check-in sessions. Elena had continued therapy long after the twins no longer needed it, finding value in having a professional space to process her ongoing growth and challenges. "You're helping other women escape situations similar to what you experienced," Dr. Chen continued. "That's bound to bring up your own trauma, even when you think you've moved past it." "I thought I had forgiven him," Elena said. "Not for his sake, but for mine. But working these cases makes me so angry about what he stole from us. Not just the money, but the time, the security, the ability to trust." "Forgiveness isn't a one-time event," Dr. Chen explained. "It's an ongoing choice, and some days that choice is harder than others. The fact that you're feeling angry doesn't mean you failed to heal. It means you're human." Elena carried that wisdom into her work, sharing it with clients who struggled with their own complex feelings about the partners who had betrayed them. She learned to normalize the full range of emotions that came with financial abuse recovery: anger, sadness, relief, guilt, fear, and, eventually, hope. The twins were thriving in their new normal. Sofia had developed a passion for science, spending hours on experiments and research projects that would have been impossible in their old house, where Marcus's work stress and demands for quiet had limited their activities. Carmen had discovered a talent for writing, filling notebooks with stories and poems that processed her experiences with remarkable insight and creativity. Both girls had learned lessons about resilience and authenticity that would serve them well throughout their lives. They understood that adults to make serious mistakes, that financial security wasn't guaranteed, and that families could survive devastating betrayals and emerge stronger. They had seen their mother transform from victim to survivor to advocate, and they carried themselves with the confidence of children who knew they came from strength. Elena's relationship with her daughters had deepened through their shared trials. Instead of the parent-child dynamic where adults protected children from difficult truths, they had developed a family culture based on honest communication and mutual respect. The twins knew they could ask hard questions and receive truthful answers. They understood their family's history and felt proud of how they had overcome it together. "Do you ever miss Dad?" Carmen asked one evening as Elena helped her with a creative writing assignment about family. It was a question Elena had been dreading and anticipating for years. She considered her answer carefully, wanting to be honest without damaging Carmen's relationship with her father or her sense of family identity. "I miss the person I thought he was," Elena said finally. "I miss the father you girls deserve to have. But I don't miss living with lies or feeling like I couldn't trust my own judgment." "Do you think he misses us?" Sofia asked, joining the conversation with the directness that had become her trademark. "I think he misses the life he threw away," Elena replied. "Whether he misses us specifically or just misses not having to face the consequences of his choices, I don't know." Marcus had written letters from prison, awkward attempts at apology and connection that Elena had read but not answered. She had saved them for the twins to read when they were older.
When they could process his words with the maturity to understand the difference between remorse and self-pity. The letters were filled with excuses and justifications, explanations about pressure and bad influences and circumstances beyond his control. He wrote about missing his family and wanting to make amends, but he never took full responsibility for the choices that had destroyed their lives together. Elena had learned to recognize the patterns of manipulation, even in written form. Marcus's letters were designed to generate sympathy and forgiveness without requiring him to do the difficult work of genuine accountability. They were another form of the charm that had initially attracted her, but had ultimately been used to exploit her trust. She wondered sometimes if he truly understood the scope of what he had stolen from them. Not just money, but security. Not just financial stability, but the ability to trust their own judgment. Not just a comfortable lifestyle, but the innocence that came from believing the people you love would protect rather than exploit you. Elena's work continued to expand as word spread about her effectiveness in financial abuse cases. She was invited to speak at legal conferences about the intersection of domestic violence and economic crime. She testified before state legislators about the need for stronger protections for victims of financial fraud by intimate partners. The speaking engagements were initially terrifying for someone who had spent years deferring to Marcus's opinions and avoiding public attention. But Elena discovered she had a gift for translating complex financial concepts into accessible language and for helping other professionals understand the psychological dynamics that made financial abuse possible. "The abuser doesn't start by stealing millions of dollars," Elena explained to a room full of family law attorneys. "They start by gradually taking control of financial decisions. They create dependency. They isolate the victim from financial information and resources. By the time the major theft occurs, the victim has been conditioned to doubt their own perceptions and to defer to the abuser's expertise." After one particularly well-received presentation, a young attorney approached Elena with a question that stopped her cold. "How do you help clients learn to trust again?" the attorney asked. "Not just trust other people, but trust their own judgment." Elena realized she had been grappling with that exact question for 3 years without fully articulating it. The work of recovery wasn't just about rebuilding finances or establishing independence. It was about learning to believe in your own perceptions again after having them systematically undermined by someone you loved. "You start small," Elena said, thinking about her own journey. "You make decisions about things that only affect you, and you notice that your judgment is sound. You build evidence that you can trust yourself before you risk trusting anyone else. That conversation sparked an idea that would become Elena's next major project. Working with Dr. Chen and Patricia Hernandez, she developed a workshop series for financial abuse survivors focused on rebuilding confidence in their own decision-making abilities. The workshops combine practical financial education with emotional support, teaching participants to recognize manipulation tactics while also helping them develop the self-trust necessary to make independent choices. Elena drew on her own experience and her professional training to create a program that addressed both the technical and psychological aspects of financial recovery. The first workshop series was held at a local community center with 8 women who had been referred by various support organizations. Elena was nervous about facilitating rather than just participating in therapy, but she found that her combination of professional expertise and personal experience created a unique credibility with the participants. "I was married to a financial criminal," Elena told the group during the first session. "I know what it feels like to discover that everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie. I also know that recovery is possible and that you can learn to trust yourself again." The workshops were immediately successful. Participants reported feeling empowered by the practical financial skills Elena taught, but more importantly, they felt understood and validated by someone who had walked a similar path. Elena's story gave them hope that their current devastation was not permanent. Word of the workshops spread, and Elena began receiving requests to bring the program to other communities. She developed a training manual and began certifying other professionals to facilitate the workshops, expanding the reach of the program beyond what she could handle alone. 2 years after starting the workshop program, Elena received a call that would test everything she had learned about forgiveness and moving forward. Marcus was being released from prison early due to his continued cooperation with federal investigations, and he wanted to see Sofia and Carmen. Elena's first instinct was to refuse. The girls were doing well, they had built a stable life, and Marcus's return to their world could only bring complication and pain. But she had spent years learning to make decisions based on what was best for her daughters, rather than what felt safest for herself. She consulted with Dr. Chen, with Patricia Hernandez, and ultimately with Sofia and Carmen themselves, who were now 13 and old enough to have opinions about their relationship with their father. "I want to see him," Sofia said after Elena explained the situation. "I want to ask him questions that I've been thinking about for years." Carmen was more hesitant. "What if he tries to make excuses again? What if he tries to make us feel sorry for him?" "Then we'll recognize that and respond accordingly," Elena said. "You've both learned to think critically about manipulation. I trust you to protect yourselves emotionally." The reunion was arranged for a supervised visit at a family services center, with a counselor present to facilitate the conversation and ensure the girls' emotional safety. Elena waited in the lobby while Sofia and Carmen met with the father they barely remembered. Marcus looked older than his years, his hair completely gray now, his expensive suits replaced by discount store clothes that didn't quite fit. Prison had aged him in ways that went beyond physical appearance. He seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of his choices. The conversation was awkward and stilted, filled with long pauses and careful words. Marcus tried to explain his actions, to apologize for the pain he had caused, to express his love for his daughters. But his words felt rehearsed and hollow, lacking the authentic accountability that might have made reconciliation possible. Sofia asked the questions she had been preparing. Why did he choose crime over family? Did he think about them while he was stealing money? How could he claim to love them while destroying their security? Marcus's answers were disappointing, but not surprising. He blamed pressure, bad influences, circumstances beyond his control. He minimized his choices and maximized his victimization. He wanted forgiveness without earning it, relationship without rebuilding trust. Carmen said very little during the visit, observing her father with the analytical skills Elena had helped her develop.
When the session ended, both girls hugged Marcus goodbye, but Elena could see they were unmoved by his appeals for sympathy. "How do you feel?" Elena asked as they drove home. "Sad," Sofia said. "Not sad that we don't have a relationship with him now, but sad that we never really had a relationship with him before. The person I thought was my father was just a character he was playing." Carmen nodded. "He wants us to feel sorry for him, but I mostly feel sorry for us. We deserved a real dad, not someone who was pretending to love us while he was betraying our family." Elena was struck by her daughter's emotional maturity and clear thinking. They had seen through Marcus's manipulation without becoming hardened or cynical. They understood
The difference between forgiveness and enabling, between compassion and gullibility. The visit confirmed Elena's instinct that they had built something better than what they had lost. Their small family of 3 was more authentic and more resilient than the larger family of 4 that had been built on lies. They had learned to love without conditions while also maintaining boundaries that protected their well-being. Marcus's release from prison did not lead to regular visitation or renewed relationship with his daughters. He moved to another state, ostensibly to start fresh, but probably to escape the ongoing consequences of his crimes in Phoenix. Elena was relieved. She had given him the opportunity to rebuild relationships with Sofia and Carmen, but she was not surprised when he proved unequal to the challenge. The girls processed the experience in therapy with Dr. Chen, working through their feelings about their father's lack of genuine change or growth. They came to understand that they had done nothing wrong in being unable to forgive someone who had not truly repented, and that they had no obligation to maintain relationships that were harmful to their emotional well-being. Elena's work continued to evolve and expand. She was invited to consult on policy development for new laws protecting victims of financial abuse. She testified in high-profile cases involving celebrity divorces and corporate fraud. Her workshop program was adopted by domestic violence organizations across the country. The recognition was gratifying, but Elena's greatest satisfaction came from the individual success stories of the women she helped. Every client who rebuilt their credit, every victim who recovered stolen assets, every survivor who learned to trust their own judgment again was a victory that validated Elena's choice to transform her pain into purpose. On the 5th anniversary of Marcus's arrest, Elena found herself back at the Phoenician resort for a different kind of celebration. Patricia Hernandez was receiving an award from the State Bar Association for her work on financial abuse cases, and Elena had been invited as her keynote speaker. Standing in the same ballroom where her marriage had ended, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The room looked exactly the same, but everything else had changed. The woman who had once planned anniversary parties was now addressing a room full of legal professionals about the importance of economic justice. 5 years ago, I stood in this room and watched my husband get arrested for financial crimes, Elena began her speech. I thought my life was over. I was wrong. My real life was just beginning. She told her story with the confidence of someone who had transformed trauma into wisdom, speaking about the journey from victim to survivor to advocate. She talked about the importance of believing women's stories about financial abuse, about the intersection of emotional and economic violence, about the possibility of rebuilding after devastating betrayal. The criminal stole money from me, Elena concluded, but he could not steal my capacity for growth, my ability to love, or my commitment to justice. Those things were mine to keep and mine to share. The standing ovation was longer and more enthusiastic than Elena had expected. But the real validation came afterward, when several attorneys approached her with stories of their own clients who had been helped by her work or inspired by her example.
Later that evening, Elena, Sarah, Sofia, and Carmen had dinner at the same Mexican restaurant where they had celebrated Elena's graduation. The girls were now 15, confident teenagers who carried themselves with the poise of young women who had learned early that they could survive anything. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Sofia said as they shared dessert. "Not just for tonight, but for everything. For showing us that bad things don't have to define your whole life. For teaching us that we're stronger than we think," Carmen added, "and that it's okay to ask for help when you need it." Elena looked around.
She looked out at her family, the real family that had emerged from the ashes of the false one. They had learned to love without illusion, to trust without naivety, to hope without denial. They had discovered that the truth, however painful, was always better than the most beautiful lie. Sarah raised her glass for a toast. To Elena Martinez, forensic accountant, financial abuse expert, amazing mother, and the bravest person I know. To family, Elena replied, the kind you choose to build based on truth instead of the kind you maintain based on lies. As they clinked glasses, Elena felt a deep sense of completion. The journey from that terrible anniversary night to this celebration of purpose and resilience had been long and difficult, but it had led her to exactly where she was meant to be. She had lost a marriage, but she had found herself. She had lost financial security, but she had gained the ability to help others find theirs. The handcuffs that had once seemed like the end of everything had actually been the beginning of something far better than what came before. Sometimes justice looks like punishment, but sometimes it looks like freedom. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to protect them from the truth that will ultimately set them all free. Elena Martinez had learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing truth over comfort, justice over convenience, and authentic love over beautiful lies. She had learned that sometimes the best anniversary gift you can give yourself is the strength to end what should never have continued. And on this night, 5 years after choosing truth over illusion, Elena Martinez was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by people who loved her for who she really was, doing work that transformed pain into purpose, and living a life built on the solid foundation of honesty rather than the shifting sand of deception. The girl who had once carried her sister across a flooded creek had grown into a woman who carried other women across the flood of financial betrayal toward the solid ground of independence and self-determination. And in doing so, she had discovered that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone to destroy themselves and everyone around them. Elena had arrested her brother-in-law at their anniversary party, but more importantly, she had arrested the progression of lies that would have continued to damage her family. She had chosen justice over false peace, truth over comfortable deception, and in doing so, she had given Sofia and Carmen the most valuable inheritance possible, the knowledge that they were strong enough to face any truth and build something beautiful from its foundation. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.